Hello and welcome. I'm Ali Mustafa and this is Straight Talk. Rising nationalist sentiment. We look at how recent events have united Turkey in solidarity. And who am I? It's a question being asked by Turks after the launch of a new genealogy service by the Turkish government. And we'll take you to Sweden to meet a group of modern-day female superheroes fighting crime on the streets of Stockholm. Turkey has seen a surge in nationalism in recent years. Events like the 2016 failed coup, military offensives against terrorism in Syria, and frayed ties with the West have driven up nationalist sentiment. The government has been vocal about pursuing a more Turkish-first policy, and many people have been applying to volunteer for military service. Ömer Kablan looks at the reasons behind the recent uptick and what it means for the country's future.
At its peak, the Ottoman Empire stretched across 3 continents. But from the 1800s, after a series of unsuccessful wars, it began to collapse. From its ruins emerged a new republic, leading to a time of great zeal, passion, and patriotism. This monument at Istanbul's Taksim Square symbolizes the sacrifice made for the creation of a modern Turkey. It was based on the idea of an inherent Turkish nationalism. But what does this nationalism mean, and how has it evolved in the past 100 years? To Atatürk, Turkey's founder, it had to do with fighting for one's country.
Uçurum kenarında yıkık bir ülke, türlü düşmanlarla kanlı buluşmalar, yıllarca süren savaş. Ondan sonra içeride ve dışarıda saygıyla tanılan yeni vatan, yeni sosyete, yeni devlet.
This new patriotism and its connection to the War of Independence has been a constant theme throughout Turkish history. It emerged during the Cyprus War of 1974 and after the failed July 2016 coup. Most recently, displays of nationalism were seen in support of the Turkish military's offensive in Afrin, Syria.
Bayrağımla her zaman gurur duyuyorum.
I am proud of my flag because the red symbolizes the blood we have spilled for it. I can sense my Turkishness when I look at it.
I have 2 sons. Both of them can be sacrificed for this country.
This patriotism has also shaped various political groups, such as the Nationalist Movement Party, or MHP. Their right-wing agenda has been criticized for being ethnically nationalist.
Türk milletinin içinde, Türkiye'de, Türk topraklarında Türk milliyetçiliğinden başka bir milliyetçilik olamaz.
But the phenomenon also has deep roots. Recently, a Turkish soldier heading off to take part in the Afrin operation was asked by a reporter what his destination was. His answer sparked excitement across the country. The red apple alludes to a mythical utopia that appears in Turkic mythology from the 8th century.
The red apple for the Turks is not something physical nor attainable. It simply represents their humane, national, and Islamic objective. It's these ideals that unite political parties, despite their differences. And it's at times of hardship that our excitement peaks.
The concept of Turkish nationalism is also a prominent feature in pop culture.
Türk'ü bu topraklardan silmeye cüret eden kim varsa bu toprakları onlara mezar edeceğim.
The drama Diriliş is a story of the origins of the Ottoman Empire, an apt representation of the story of modern Turkey itself and the nationalism that has continued for generations. Ömer Kablan, Straight Talk.
And joining me now in the studio to discuss this idea of Turkish nationalism further is Nagihan Alçı. She's a journalist at Haberturk newspaper. and our very own Hakkı Öcal, who's returning once again. He's, of course, a lecturer at Ibn Khaldun University. Thank you so much for being here. Now, recently, the Center for American Progress, it's a think tank based in the US, conducted a national survey in Turkey. They polled about 2,500 people and to ascertain rising nationalist attitudes in Turkey. And one of the questions that they asked was, how important was it to be a Turk or to have been born a Turk? 86% of respondents said it was either very important or somewhat important. Why do you think it's so important for a lot of people in this country to take pride in being Turks? Nagihan.
Well, actually this question has, I think, many aspects. First of all, we should ask ourselves what those people understand of being a Turk. I think in the last maybe 5-6 years, the perception of the state has changed in Turkey. Because before President Erdogan became President Erdogan, before he got so strong in politics, the state apparatus was controlled actually mainly by military and bureaucratic elite. And the masses could not identify themselves with the state. Now, with Erdogan becoming stronger in years, he has been in power for about 16 years, but he has become the real power actually in the last 5-6 years. So
and has emerged as a nationalistic figure.
Well, he managed to change the tools operating the state. So for the first time in modern Turkish history, maybe, the elected politicians have become the real power controlling the state. So people's notion, people's perception of state has changed. So for the masses, I think it's easier nowadays to identify themselves with the state, which I think contributed to the enhancing of the nationalistic ideas. But we should, of course, ask ourselves if those 86% of the respondents understand an ethnic identity of being a Turk, or if being a Turk means for them an umbrella identity. For example, if being a Turk also includes the Kurds as well. Well, I think that's one of the most important questions we should ask ourselves.
That's a very important point that Nagihan raises, Hakkı, that the idea of what it means to be a Turk has gone through an evolution from the purview of the elites after Ataturk to a more egalitarian or open-based identity. What do you make of it?
That's exactly true. I mean, when you go back to 1930s, when this Turkism was being defined, the question was, it was defined as opposed to multi-ethnicity of Ottomanism. Now, they were, remember those days, our viewers will remember those days, nationalism was on rise all over the Europe, but Turks were recovering from the ashes of Ottomanism, which was multi-ethnic entity, and in which you had Kurds having pride in being Kurd, or Turks having pride in being Turk. Now, Ataturk and the new republic created a new constitutional definition of the word. Again, we have to look if this new nationalism is going to be something like expansionism, or if those catchwords like Kızıl Elma are going to be transferred into some sort of irredenta. That is not the case. I mean, go and ask Turkish people, to the same people who responded to this research survey, if they really want to go and invade all Ottoman areas in Middle East, they would say no. They are perfectly happy because we have been inculcated with the slogans like peace at home, peace in the world, kind of thing. We don't have, I mean, the very thing Erdogan said when he was starting this cleanup job along the frontiers was, we don't have an eye on one iota of anyone else's land. This is important. I mean, what is happening is just patriotism, if you ask me.
It's interesting, Hakkı, that you mentioned that Turks don't have an expansionist idea of their nationalism, but let's listen into what the leader of the main nationalist party in Turkey, Devlet Bahçeli, had to say following the Afrin operation in Syria.
Of course, Afrin is Syria. However, if the Syrian government cooperates with terrorism, history will be revived, the memories will rise once again, and we will have the right to keep the land that we have left 100 years ago, at least until it reaches peace and stability.
Devlet Bahçeli Haka seems to disagree with your specific assertion that Turks don't have an expansionist idea. So what do you make of it?
I mean, this is very nationalistic party. I mean, the political program they have is some sort of supremacy for Turkish people. Not Turks, ethnic Turks, but for the Turkish people. However, if we pay a little more attention to what he said, he's not talking about expanding the existing borders. He wants to keep the peace there. I mean, we've been wounded a lot from the bombs coming from those corridor state, Rojava adventure and everything. And whenever you say such things, Afrin and Rojava or something, people immediately remember the equip and train programs of the United States for the Kurds.
It's interesting you say that because as part of the survey that I mentioned earlier from the Center of American Progress, they also asked a question on, should Turkey have a more isolationist position in the world? And 55% of respondents said yes, Turkey needs to chart its own course without other countries. Nagihan, why this isolationism? Because this is a country at a crossroads. It was part of a larger empire, but now it's shrunk to its present-day position. So is there this unease or this friction within Turkish society on a bigger role or a more limited role?
I think to answer this question, we have to look at the general stand of the world today. The world is going through hard times, especially in our region, in the Middle East. I think people feel kind of threatened, and that's why they want to look a little more inward, which I think is not the right response to overcome such a threat coming from outside to Turkey.
Haka Hocal, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Nagihan Alchi, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Now, we've been discussing the question of Turkish nationalism, but questions of identity have been a hot topic in Turkey as well after a new online genealogy service was launched by the government. It's allowed the public to trace their roots and find out about their ancestors. It's caused both intrigue and controversy, as Elif Bereketli reports.
Artist Ümit Özdoğan and lawyer Asena Doğan have been friends for as long as they can remember. They know everything about each other. Or at least they thought they did.
I always thought I was from Izmir, but apparently my mom's side is from Bulgaria. We had no prior knowledge about it.
And I'm from Mersin. It is a city in southern Turkey. However, I recently found out that I also have roots in Sivas, in a village that could potentially be an Alevi one.
These friends are among the millions of Turks who are discovering previously unknown parts of their ancestry, thanks to an online database launched by the government. Now, with a single click, every Turkish citizen can trace his or her family's roots, names, birthplaces, and dates of deaths, going back generations. Within days of the database launching, more than 5 million Turks logged on in search of their past. The traffic to the platform was so high, it even crashed.
I have a confession to make. I was one of the millions of users that helped crash the site. I was curious to find out if I had a connection to Greece because my mother is from Aydın on the west coast of Turkey. It's an area with residents known for having Greek ancestry. But after searching my records, I found out that's not the case. It turns out my mother and her family have roots in Turkey going back hundreds of years. So everything we already knew remains true. My ethnic makeup is not as interesting as I thought.
The state has been in possession of this data for centuries, so why now open them to the public?
Turkey was one of the first few countries to digitize all government services. This has given the state more confidence and made it stronger. That's why the documents have been made easy to access now.
So some people asked the government to close down the service, claiming that it perpetuates the ethnic differences in the society. What's your opinion on this?
On the contrary, I think the service is showing how diverse our society is. Some people don't think the documents are reliable. That I find political. Turkey is at a crossroads of major population movements throughout history. We're Middle Eastern, we're Caucasian, we're Balkan. Turkish identity is complex and difficult to simplify. Ethnicity is more of a cultural concept for us. So I don't think this project is divisive. It's more unifying.
For Ümit and Asena, those words are especially true.
I heard some people who discovered to have Balkan roots are applying for European citizenship. I did the query for fun, really. I don't think I'll be applying for a citizenship or anything. Why would I? I was born here, I live here. Aren't I already a citizen to a country? I guess I'm just getting on fine. Minorities, different ethnicities are a part of our history and our reality in Turkey today. I cherish it.
I actually think if I have Alevi connections, it will strengthen my bond to the Turkish society. I believe in our differences.
It seems that instead of reconnecting to their past, these two Turks, like millions of others, are choosing to focus on the present. Elif Bereketli, Straight Talk.
And joining me now is Hakan Erdem. He's a historian at Sabancı University in Istanbul. Thank you so much for being here. Fascinating discussion around this. Why are people in Turkey so interested in knowing where they come from?
And that's to a certain extent is natural that people are yearning to learn their ancestors. Unfortunately, you know, we don't have many records going back to the depths of history, but we still have a surprising number of Ottoman records that were made available now through this system that is called e-state. So people, you know, just go and check and see for themselves, and people discover their ancestors, learn new names. That's amazing that, I mean, some people can go back in history to early 19th century, 1820s, 1830s, yeah.
It's fascinating. And and you were saying it's natural, it's a natural yearning to know where you come from. Yeah. But in the case of Turkey specifically, and I'm going to go back to the books here, David Fromkin, in his book, A Peace to End All Peace, published in 1989, said that in 1903, when the census was held, the last Ottoman census, 40% of the population was Turkic speaking, 40% was Arab, 20% were Kurds, Armenians, Greeks, so on and so forth. But most of the power, 70% of the seats in the port were held by the Turks.
I mean, you can debate the numbers, argue against them, but basically the Ottoman Empire had a larger population that were underrepresented, not only in the assembly, but in the population records as well, in the censuses. The Ottoman censuses were more or less taking into consideration the heartlands of the Ottoman Empire, the Balkans and Anatolia, and not all Anatolia as we understand today.
Southeast
was excluded, but I mean all the way from Istanbul to Kars, Anatolia was counted for military recruitment reasons. I mean, the state was not interested in counting each and every person in 1831 for the first modern, so-called modern census. Only those people who were eligible for the military service, meaning males and Muslims, and for those people, males and eligible for paying the taxes, these are non-Muslim males. Females were not even counted in the first census. In 1844, there was a change. Females were also counted, but the census itself was not nearly as thorough as the first one in 1831. So we don't have a regular census in the Ottoman Empire until 1878, even later.
So this new country is created, Turkey. It's inheriting all these records from the 1800s, 1820s, from the Ottoman Empire. But we see a break happen here as well, right? In trying to mold a new country, some names are suppressed, some others are given. There's a lot, you know, there's the questions about orphans who were given different names that can't trace their lineage beyond the 1920s, for example. So tell us about this controversy.
Well, I mean, some scholars think that, I mean, this is a good opportunity to reconcile with the past for individuals, for individual people to discover their identities, their families' identities. So every now and then, I mean, people are able to find an ancestor, surprisingly, who is not Turkish. Okay, I mean...
And on this point,
yes.
there's also this controversy that this data dump, as you said,
Yeah.
you know, they might not be Turkish, they might be Armenians, Greeks, whatever. There's this perception or this fear that this could be used to discriminate. This data dump, these new revelations could be used to discriminate against certain groups or ethnicities.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, only the converts to the Islam were counted as, you know, the Ottoman Empire's Muslim citizens, and the records for the Armenian and Greek communities were kept by their own patriarchates. So, I mean, I don't see on what grounds. I mean, there could be a discrimination. I mean, people, they discover a grandmother who is Armenian, so what? I mean, but on the other hand, I should also say that contrary to the expectations, I mean, this new tool, this new gadget doesn't solve all the problems of identity. You can't go back, I mean, beyond, say, early 19th century. And people are curious to learn about that too. I mean, for this, you have to go to the archives and try to conduct a genealogical research on your own, but it is difficult.
As a historian, we've known the past. What does this mean, this survey, these revelations? How important is it, and what does it mean for Turkey moving forward?
It is important. I mean, it is human. It is important. I mean, I myself checked it and discovered
what did you find?
Some ancestors whose names I didn't know. And there are some also mistakes of census keeping or record keeping as well. So there's room for improvement. But
were you surprised by your own findings?
Not much. I mean, I knew even older ancestors than the records. So that wasn't a kind of that wasn't a kind of surprise. But I was able to learn, especially names of the ladies from the female side, from my mother's side, and they had excellent, nice names. And I mean, there's a lady called Mihri. I like the name so much, so I discovered a Mihri in my own lineage from my mother's side. So this is good. I mean, it's a good start.
Hakan Erdem, fascinating discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Now, we've seen fictional superheroes in movies like The Dark Knight, The Avengers, and the recent box office hit, Black Panther. But can these silver screen legends compare to heroes in the real world? A group of mothers in Sweden may offer a clue. They're known as the Night Watch Women, who patrol the icy streets of Stockholm in their mission to fight crime. Adil Halim joined forces with the mighty mothers to find out more.
It's been called everything from a vulnerable area by police to a no-go zone by the alt-right. But for some residents,
Fitya is a paradise for me.
Fitya faces the same social problems as many other urban areas: crime, drugs, and gangs. But a new gang in town is hoping to change that.
We watch everyone. Don't be afraid.
Led by 63-year-old Fatma İpek, these Turkish women patrol the streets of Fitya every Friday and Saturday night to keep their community safe, even on these early March nights in minus 10-degree weather.
It used to be dangerous. Our women and daughters were unable to go out because the youth were messing with them.
İpek moved to Sweden 3 decades ago, but just 3 years ago, the mother of 7 started this security patrol in her Fitya neighborhood. She's gained the respect of police and the youth. And who would dare mess with these supermoms?
They used to call Fitya a phallic place, which means dangerous. Now they call it Lunyagatan, which means a calm neighborhood. This shows the influence of mothers. I have 50 mothers who walk.
While she began walking to keep tabs on her own son, it created a snowball effect.
I love not only my own children, but all children in Fitya, and I want to make a contribution with this walk.
These night patrols began as a co-ed activity, but İpek says some men didn't like the idea of women taking the lead. So instead of dropping the idea, they dropped the men and decided to walk on their own. Out here, İpek's a rock star. Her work has not gone unnoticed. İpek was recently named Sweden's Hero of the Year by one of the country's largest newspapers. The Turkish national won the most votes in the Guiding Light category. İpek's her gentle yet firm approach goes a long way with the youth.
When their moms see them smoking, they throw their cigarettes away or hide them. But when they see a man or a police officer, they get cross and want to appear strong.
İpek's crew of supermoms and grandmothers appears strong as well. Adil Halim, Straight Talk, Fitja, Stockholm.
And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Ali Mustafa. If you've got any comments or suggestions, do share them with us at #StraightTalk. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can catch up on all our previous episodes. Until next time, take care and goodbye.